Hello, all you happy people. Gentlemen, and welcome to The Mole Hole with the hardest working sports announcer in St. Louis that nobody's ever heard of. He's Randy Molman, and the show starts now. Good morning, St. Louis, and welcome to The Mole Hole. Oh my, it is amazing how much better mood I'm in when it's sunny and warmer. My seasonal depression is gone. Although I will say, like, over the winter when it gets cold and, the holidays are done and New Year's is done, I always had that January and February where I was like, ugh. But working so much and doing so much announcing work over those 2 months really eliminates that because I love doing that so much. So, but yeah, love the weather. And the fact that we're getting to warm weather and, it's bikini season for me soon, and I can't wait for that. I'm sure my wife can't wait for that either. Could we walk over to the pool separately? She'll say. Yes, we can. Can you not sit next to me, please, when you take your shirt off? I don't blame her. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Boy, so much going on. I'm going to talk today for those of you that are tuning in today that are used to me, talking sports or whatever. Today, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about public address announcing work. I'm going to kind of go through the ins and outs. I've actually had, believe it or not, several people over the last couple of months reach out to me or ask me questions or wondering what it's like, what the behind the scenes stuff is like, do's and don'ts. My opinion on what public address announcers should be and what they shouldn't be. So this first segment is going to be dedicated to that. I'm getting into the nuts and bolts of it. If you're not interested in that, come back at 8:30 because Andy Carroll from Scoops with Danny Mack is going to be calling in. We're going to talk the huge Battlehawks game on Sunday and a little bit of Cardinal baseball at 8:30. So let me just real quick. I know that I kind of posted this link to a couple of Facebook groups I'm a part of, especially public address announcing, believe it or not, groups that everyone's always asking advice. Everyone's always wondering like how they can be better, what they can do, how to get jobs, all that good stuff. And so I had posted the link to this show there. So just to give you a brief resume, I've been doing public address work now for over 15 years. I had dreams coming out of college of being a play-by-play broadcaster. Quite frankly, I still have those dreams as I'm doing a lot of that work now as well here regionally. But I turned down minor league baseball offers to do play-by-play out of college because the highest it paid was $500 a month. There was no way I could afford that and live on my own in some small city at age 22 or 23. So I went a different path. I have a whole separate career, and announcing has now become my side gig. But 2007, I applied for a minor league baseball public address job, went to an open audition, and got hired. I do a lot of high school work. Since then, I did minor league baseball for 10 years. Since then, I've done almost every sport you can think of in about every size venue you can think of. The only building I haven't worked in here in St. Louis is Busch Stadium. It's the only building I have not done any work in. So small gyms all the way up to 70+ thousand seat stadiums. I'm currently the public address announcer for the University of Missouri football, SEC football, and basketball. I do public address for the Battlehawks here in St. Louis, the XFL, which I auditioned for twice and got twice. I do a lot of work for Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, Division I sports program, athletic program over in Edwardsville, Illinois, 20 minutes east of downtown St. Louis. Although that has now transitioned to more play-by-play work. But to give you an idea, I've done Division II, I've done Division III, I've done high school, all the sports, pretty much all the sports. And I've learned quite a bit along the way. And I've got I've got strong ideas and preferences to when I go to a game and I'm a fan and I'm listening to the public address announcer. So let's get into this. First of all, I'm going to do the do's first. Here's what I think as a public address announcer, behind the scenes, what you should be doing, and then what you should be doing during games. First and foremost, your number one job. There is nothing about a public address announcer or a broadcaster, quite frankly, that drives me more crazy since I started doing this work than a public address announcer who doesn't get the pronunciations of names right. And believe it or not, it happens almost everywhere, or almost in any sport I go to as a fan. I will hear a public address announcer not do their homework to get name pronunciation correct. I do not care. A lot of people who are listening will say, again, here's a little behind the scenes. Most organizations, especially if you've already gotten to know your home team, most road team organizations, maybe not at the high school level because they just don't have the resources, but at the college level for sure, they should be giving you a roster that has a pronunciation guide on it. And and I'm going to tell you right now, do not trust it. Do not trust it. And I'm not saying that because I'm ripping on the people that are phonetically spelling it out because they're not doing their jobs. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying sometimes people phonetically spell it out differently than you would phonetically spell it out. Yesterday, I was calling a game for University of Missouri softball on the SEC network. A player on the other team, the pronunciation on the sheet was wrong. Because when I went down there pregame, which is what you should be doing, everyone should be doing it. I went down to their dugout because they did not have a rep there at the game. They didn't have an SID. They didn't have somebody repping their college softball team. So I went down to the dugout and I went through the roster. And sure enough, one of the phonetically spelled out pronunciations was not the way I would have spelled it out, and I would have said her name wrong the entire broadcast. And if I was a public address announcer, I would have announced her wrong the entire game. Do not trust the phonetic spellings on the pronunciation guide. It makes me so upset that public address announcers are so lazy that they can't get to the venue well ahead of time to go over scripts, which I'm going to talk about in a second. I won't go in detail on scripts, but talk about my philosophy on that, and won't get there and give themselves plenty of time to track down someone from another. Look, here in St. Louis, we've got professional soccer. We've got professional football with the XFL. We've got the Cardinals. We've got the Blues. And by the way, I know I'm jumping around a bit. Before I go on, I'm not sitting here telling you I have the greatest public address voice of all time. I don't. I've been told I have a great voice. The reason I'm good at what I do is because of the prep and getting there early and doing the homework. That sounds a little cocky. I get it. But I'm good at what I do, not because, I'm a major talent. I'm good at what I do because I put the work in, because I prep for it, because I get ready, because I make sure I'm comfortable. So part of that is getting the pronunciations. Get there early enough. Track down the other team's radio crew. Their radio announcers will know the pronunciations. Track down a rep from the team that is in the media, is part of media and is in the press box. For you high school public address announcers, go to the other team's bench. Grab an assistant coach. Go down the roster. I know this sounds simple. I'm sure there's people out there going, well, of course. It doesn't happen. I go to games all the time. I've been to games recently, everyone, where the home team public address announcer wasn't announcing the home team players' names correctly. Do your homework. Get the names right. These people, by the way, from high school players all the way up to professional players, their name is their legacy. Their name is their history. When you announce their name wrong and you don't get the pronunciation right, it's disrespectful to that person and their family. I can't stand it. And it's not that I can't stand it because I sit there and go, oh, that public address announcer is terrible. I would be better than that. That's not it. I listen to that and I go, how could you not do your homework? This is your job. How could you not get the name pronunciations right? This is your job. You're disrespecting that athlete and you're disrespecting that athlete's family. Do you know how many times I will get a pronunciation? Look, it's not foolproof. There's times I get pronunciation straight from a coach or a radio person. And then a family member, especially at high school games, will come up to me during halftime or something and go, you're pronouncing my daughter or my son's name wrong. And I will look at them and say, I am so sorry. Please tell me how to say it correctly. I don't get mad about it. I don't get upset about it because they should be mad at me for not getting it right. So job number one, get the pronunciations right. It sounds simple, but it's not being done in a lot of cases. I'm telling you. Job number two, depending on the level, you're going to have from high school all the way up to professional, you're going to have scripts, right? Advertisement reads, introduction of companies and teams and other sports and whatever. High school, you won't have as much. You get up to college football where I work at Mizzou or at the Battlehawks here, and it's a detailed, long, big script where I've always have something at every time out. Ask for the script ahead of time. We were talking about doing your homework. I hear public address announcers who read scripts, and it sounds like they're reading it for the first time. You know, they're like, ladies and gentlemen, please. And they're reading it, please welcome so-and-so team to, and they say it as if they're reading it for the first time. Again, I've auditioned now twice for the Battlehawks against 35 plus other potential public address announcers. I've auditioned for Mizzou football and basketball. There was over 40 people auditioning for that. I auditioned for a bunch of people my first time out for the Rascals, blah, blah, blah. What I've come to realize during game day is when you record yourself doing sound, the more you know the script, the more you've read the script. And I don't mean just flipping through. All right, we do that, we do that, we do that. I'm talking about reading the script out loud in your basement, in your man cave, in your I say man cave. There's so many female public address announcers out there. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean that. In your man or woman cave, in your living room, on your porch, in your car, take the script with you. Read through the script out loud because you're going to get the cadence. You're going to get your pauses. You're going to get how you want to say. You're going to get the phonetical spelling of names that might be in the script. You are going to be comfortable with the way that sounds before you get to the venue. I know there's a lot of people that'll say, well, in high school, they don't give it to you ahead of time. You get it. Well, then get there early. Get there early. Tell the person who's running that game day that you need the script when you get there, and you're going to be there an hour and a half before the game starts. And read through the script. Again, this is stuff that doesn't sound hard, but it's stuff that drives me crazy. The do's. Here are the do's. Get the pronunciations right at all costs. Read through your script over and over. And by the way, you're going to have, for example, with the Battlehawks that I work for, with Mizzou football and basketball, with I actually sat in for STL City soccer recently. A lot of those scripts are going to be the same. You're going to have the same reads, right? Because they've contracted the same sales, the same companies for the same sales all season. So a lot of the script's going to be the same. There's just going to be tweaks. So you'll know that script, but you want to know the tweaks. You don't want to show up at the venue and be like, oh, wow, this script is different. You should have known that already. Ask whoever's running game day to send you an early script. It may not be fully complete, maybe 80% complete. Read through what's there, because when you get to the venue and you get to the changes, it's only going to be 20% different. So I've been told countless times, time and again, Man, you sound natural. Man, it doesn't sound like you're reading anything. Man, your voice is great. All of that is happening because I do the prep work. You do the prep work. That's it. Those are the do's. Get to your venue early. For Mizzou football, I'm there 3 hours before kickoff. For the Battlehawks, I'm there 3.5 hours before kickoff. When I worked at STL City, I was there early, and 3 hours, and I read over the script over and over after having the game day ops person at STL City send me the script a couple of days early so that I could practice it, so that I could read it. Get to the venues early, way early, earlier than you think is necessary. Because what we know in live sports and in production, things will change. And if you are already uncomfortable, you haven't read through the script, you haven't gotten your pronunciations, you haven't done your prep work, by the time you get there and stuff does go awry and new things are getting thrown in and things are getting taken out or whatever, you are going to be very, very uncomfortable, and it's going to sound that way to the crowd. So, man, it's not that hard to commit fully to do your job, which is know the script, be prepared, know the pronunciations. I mean, people are so concerned, and I'm going to get to this too. This is a little ins and outs with the Battlehawks public address. People are so concerned. I see questions on these public address forums all the time. People are so concerned with how they say certain things. How should I say this? How should I announce that? How about you focus on whatever script is there and the pronunciations first, then work on your delivery of getting the information out. Let me tell you another thing. This is going to now start going into the don'ts. No one, and I mean no one, goes to the game to listen to you. Nobody. No one is there at a Battlehawks game because I bought tickets because I want to hear this public address announcer tell me it's 2nd and 6 on the 33-yard line. Nobody cares enough to spend money to listen to you do your job. And by the way, including my family, which is a little sad. But no one's there to listen to you. And so now as I get into the don'ts, don't make it about you. I see people in these forums all the time. People have asked me questions all the time. How do I make it more exciting? How do I inject my, again, no one's there to listen to you. Everyone's there to watch the game, cheer for their team, and be there because they love that sport. They're not there to listen to you. Your job is to subtly get the crowd involved at the right time, elevate a little, get a little excited, at certain, like in football, first downs are always a big announcement. Third downs on defense, always a big announcement. There's a subtle way to get the crowd up and to get the crowd excited without making it about you. There is a dance. You've got to dance that line, because anything less than that, and to me, you're not prepared and you're not good at the job. Anything more than that, and you're making it about you. It's not about you. Public address announcers who yell, who scream, who are standing up on the floor at basketball games and whooping it up, that's an MC. That's a hype man. That's not a public address announcer. I'm talking about being a public address announcer. If you have to scream to get the crowd up because your voice, you can't inflect, or you can't raise the cadence, or you can't elevate your voice to get a subtle reaction from the crowd, then this is not the job for you. I hate people who get the pronunciations wrong, and I hate when I go to a venue and the public address announcer, they've hired a public address announcer who does not have the voice. This is going to sound harsh, but does not have the voice, and they yell and they scream. There's a difference between me going, it's 3rd third down and getting elevated to get the crowd up. There's a difference between that and it's third down. There's a difference. And it's horrible when there's a public address announcer who yells and cannot subtly use their voice to get the crowd elevated. Starting lineups, I get there's going to be a little bit more excitement there. But again, I can tell the difference between a yeller and a screamer versus someone who can elevate their voice and get the crowd up, even in starting lineups. I've heard several recently at big venues who do not have the voice to work in public address. And they yell and they scream. And I've sat there and been like, ugh. And I'm sorry. That's harsh. It is. Don't yell. Don't scream. And if you have to, it's because you don't have the voice for the job. So that's the first and foremost on the don'ts. Stop yelling. If they want you to be a hype man, that's different, right? If you're a public address announcer, stop yelling. Stop screaming. And if you find yourself that you can't get the crowd excited without yelling, then you shouldn't be doing the job, honestly. And you game day ops people out there, please recognize the difference. Your crowd may think that this public address announcer is fine, but what they don't realize is if they had a real public address announcer with a real strong voice that can elevate their voice, that can magnify their voice, that can subtly get the crowd up without screaming and yelling, they will like that announcer even more. Your game day will be even better. Stop hiring people that yell and scream. Unless you want a hype man, then that's different. I feel like a lot of NBA PA announcers are going to more hype men. The Rams in the NFL, believe it or not, their public address announcer, you listen to him, I don't think he's a PA announcer. I think they hired a hype man to do that job. So, and that's fine. That's what they want. But stop yelling and screaming. Don't yell and scream. It's awful. That's the huge don't for me. And again, don't complain about scripts. Scripts are written a certain way for the buyer. So for the company that has bought the advertising, stop complaining about the scripts. Learn the scripts so that you know them better and you can read them better. You can make some subtle changes in it, I'm sure, so that it reads better. Go to your, whoever's handling that and make sure that they know you've made a little tweak or two to the verbiage. Other than that, stop complaining about the scripts. Don't complain about the scripts. Learn the scripts so that you are better prepared to read them and make it sound natural. There are two public address announcers in town that I've been listening to since I was a kid, since I was young, right? One, of course, is Tom Calhoun of the St. Louis Blues, who, by the way, just completed his 1,640-something game without ever missing a game for the Blues. Almost 30 years now. He's never missed a game. When you sign up for this job, if you have to miss games, clear it, right? You have to clear it. But you can't miss half the season. You can't commit to a job and then go, oh, I have a thing for my daughter, and you're going to miss some family stuff. You are. Don't miss a ton of games unless, of course, you've worked it out with the venue, right? Or the organization or the team. But anyway, I do not profess. Andy Carroll, who's going to be coming on at 8:30, he was an intern at the River City Rascals minor league baseball team when I was doing public address there. That's how I got to know Andy. We used to joke, because I was the public address announcer there, we used to joke about how I'm no Tom Calhoun. Like, we used to joke about that, and I'm not. Tom Calhoun, for you St. Louis folks, probably the best public address voice, one of I've ever heard in my life, regardless of venue or sport. His voice is smooth, and it's deep. I don't have that voice. I've got a good announcer voice. I do not have Tom Calhoun's voice. I never will have that voice. So what I lack in that natural, deep, beautiful, mellifluous voice, I make up for in making sure I'm prepped and I sound natural. My voice is deep enough to do the job, but I do the work behind the scenes. The other announcer is John Hewlett for the Cardinals. He's been there since the 80s. John Hewlett does not have Tom Calhoun's voice. John Hewlett doesn't maybe have my voice. His voice isn't as deep as mine, I don't think. But he sounds so natural and not laid back, but it sounds natural and smooth and easy because he is so good at it. And so again, you don't have to, for you those out there going, oh, so I have to have this deep voice. You're telling me that I can't yell and scream and I have to have a certain type of voice. You don't have to have a certain type of voice. You have to be able to raise that voice and subtly get the crowd excited when you're doing public address work. It doesn't matter if you have the Tom Calhoun voice or my voice or the John Hewlett voice. You don't have to have any of that. But I will say, you have to sound natural, and that comes from the prep work. It comes from all the prep work. Okay? So, my point here, don't yell. Don't scream. If you are yelling and screaming, you have to yell and scream to get the crowd up, then you're not, this isn't for you. I don't care how well you know the sport. I don't care how well you're ingrained in the sport. I don't care who you know at the team. You shouldn't be doing the job. And so my point is, don't yell and scream. I've been listening to some of the greats in St. Louis for a number of years. I was just backing up at a venue recently where the game day manager looked at me during the night and said, you've got one of the most natural, coolest voices for this job that I've ever heard. And I was just filling in at that venue. And I said, thank you very much. But guess what? I got the script ahead of time. I went over the script. I did my due diligence on the pronunciations of both teams. And I was prepared and ready. And it was easy. When you're prepared and ready, the job is fairly easy. Don't make it about you. This job is not about you. No one's there to paid money to listen to you. You are there to subtly get the crowd excited at the right time, and you are there to provide information. And that's it. Once you get to a point where you're like, oh, I'm going to do this because I want to be noticed. The Battlehawks, we came up with a first down announcement. I was talking to my spotter pregame, and the first game I had several ideas of what I wanted to do. And my thought was, for you Battlehawks fans that might be listening, my thought was, we've lost 2 football teams in this town. We are proud St. Louisans. We are proud St. Louis football fans. I wanted something on that first down announcement that was St. Louis. We are St. Louis. And so I kind of workshopped it with my spotter who was in the booth with me. And I had a couple of different ideas, and we came up with the first down STL. And that's, by the way, if I had said, this is how subtle it is. If I had gone first down STL or first down Battlehawks, or like everyone else does, that's a first down or that's a Battlehawks and dragged it out, everyone would have yelled first down, right? Everyone does that. So I wanted to do something different on the first down. And it's subtle, and I'm not yelling, but it is a pause, and it's the crowd recognizes pauses. The crowd's not dumb. They know when to get involved. So when I do the first down, S, and then the crowd's in it, TL, it took 1 quarter, and 35,000 Battlehawks fans were in the first down STL. And it's a shout out to yourselves as fans, and it's a pat on the back to you St. Louis football fans, and it's a proud STL, and that's what I wanted to do with the Battlehawks games. And so I think about stuff like that, but it has to be subtle. You have to work it in, and you have to assume fans are smart, and they'll pick it up. SIUE does on 3-point baskets, they do a 3 for the, and the crowd yells E. All you got to do is yell it one time, or announce it the right way one time, drag it out the right way one time, and then you don't have to say E. The crowd yells E. The Battlehawks, they all yell STL. I don't have to say STL anymore. At Mizzou, it's first down, MIZ. The crowd yells ZOU. It's It's not rocket science because the crowd's not dumb, but you have to be subtle. Don't yell. Get the pronunciations right. Learn the script. Make it natural. That's it. That's it. The ins and outs of 15 years of doing public address. I'm sure I put a lot of you to sleep. Wake up, because the Battlehawks, we're going to talk Battlehawks next. Andy Carroll from Scoops with Danny Mac, who covers the Battlehawks, joins me. We may also get into a little Cardinal baseball as well. We'll be back right after that. Folks, it's time to let You've Got Maids focus on cleaning your home so you can focus on life. Whether you need weekly, bi-weekly, one-time cleaning, your home will be cleaned to your highest expectations. Your satisfaction is 100% guaranteed. You can get a free, no-obligation estimate today. See how little it can cost to have all of your house cleaning needs met by You've Got Maids and their trained maids. All you have to do is go to you'vegotmaids.com, enter your zip code and a little bit of information about your dwelling, and they'll come back immediately with a free estimate. You've Got Maids offers cleaning services ranging from deep cleaning to simple everyday cleaning on a schedule that matches yours. Live well, laugh often, love much. Stop cleaning your house. Turn it over to You've Got Maids at you'vegotmaids.com. Are you a company who needs help recruiting and hiring full-time professionals in the areas of engineering or information technology? Then call Steve Tucker at Talent Edge. Steve has over 25 years experience in recruiting as a partner and can really give you the edge you need. Also, calling all candidates looking for new opportunities in engineering or IT. Steve will help match your skill set to the right opportunity. 314-276-0074 or check out Talent Edge at talentedgellc.net. Once again, 314-276-0074. Talent Edge. Height Digital is a full-service digital marketing agency that helps local businesses grow online. They offer everything from logo and branding to website design, search engine optimization, and paid advertising on Google and Facebook. Height was just named to the top marketing agency list for 2022 by St. Louis Small Business Monthly. Contact them today for a free digital audit to see how you can grow. That's Height Digital, HITE digital.com/ST-Louis. We are back in the mole hole, everybody. Welcome back. For those that may have missed the first segment on the my ins and outs, do's and don'ts, nuts and bolts of the public address world, we'll have it up on a SoundCloud podcast that I will put out on social media later, as well as this interview with Scoops with Danny Mac star Andy Carroll. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, Randy. How are you?
I'm good. I just told the story. I don't know if you heard it, about how you and I used to sit in the press box at the River City Rascals and joke about how I am no Tom Calhoun.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, I did catch the end of your segment, and there was one game I filled in for you, and I definitely tried to be the star. So when you only get one chance at it, Randy, you think you are the center of the show.
Well, I mean, right now you are a star at Scoops with Danny Mac. You're writing about a lot of stuff, especially the Battlehawks. Let's get into that first. For those that want to read up on the Battlehawks, that are Battlehawks fans, go to Scoops with Danny Mac. Andy Carroll covers the team, writes some great stories. What was your main story this week?
Yeah, this week's going to be a preview of this week's game against Seattle. It's the biggest game in the XFL. Arguably the biggest regular season game in the league this season. The playoff spot, the second playoff spot in the XFL North Division is at stake. If the Battlehawks beat Seattle this weekend, they will have clinched that spot, and they will play against the DC Defenders in the first round, essentially the semifinals of the XFL playoffs, which would be 2 weeks from this weekend. So big weekend at the Dome at America's Center, and it's going to preview that, but it's also going to feature Hakeem Butler and Gary Jennings Jr. Gary Jennings Jr. was the special teams receiver that caught the fake punt pass in the fourth quarter last week against the Vegas Vipers and ran that 64 yards for a touchdown. And I think, one of the neat things about the XFL and why it's so important that these spring football leagues survive is, Gary Jennings and Hakeem Butler are both really good examples of players that were right on the cusp of NFL rosters. Hakeem Butler, who leads the XFL in touchdown receptions, he's tied for the XFL lead, and he's been such a huge player for the Battlehawks this year, a big part for A.J. Aaron. He was a fourth-round pick in the 2019 NFL Draft. He was an all Big 12 receiver at Iowa State. I mean, this was absolutely somebody who was an NFL product. He goes to camp his rookie season and breaks his hand. He's on injured reserve the entire season, and then he's waived, in the off season. And that's sometimes just how little chance that you get. It's a very tough business to make a roster in the NFL, and you don't get a whole lot of chances. And if you run into a little bad luck, like Hakeem Butler did, you find yourself on the outside looking in. And he was someone who was about to walk away from football before this XFL opportunity opened up. So similar story for Gary Jennings as well. I'm going to feature both of those in my week 9 preview for this week. But big game coming up, Randy.
Yeah, and crowds have been 35,000 or more with a playoff spot on the line against a division opponent that you're battling for that spot with. I anticipate another huge crowd on Sunday. Look, just off of the team for a second and talk about the fans for a second. We know that you and I both know that this national narrative that's as a matter of fact, you and I just got into this with somebody on Twitter just this last week. The national narrative is we don't support football in St. Louis. That's why the teams have left, because our fan support is terrible. And that's the national narrative. And I think I'd say 70 to 80% of the fans that go to Battlehawks games are there because they love football and they're glad we have a professional team. And then there's an overlap with that group and another 20% that are bought tickets and are going to games to flip a middle finger to the rest of the world who thinks we don't support football. We have a real chip on our shoulder, and we should here in St. Louis, because this city is a proud and good football fan base. And it's being proven out. Look, I thought game 1, oh yeah, we're going to knock it out of the park, 38 to 40,000. We're going to kill it. And then I figured we'd get some drop off, maybe back into the 20,000s for the next couple of games. But these crowds have maintained at 35,000 plus. Talk about the St. Louis football fan.
Yeah, so I have the numbers in front of me. The Battlehawks are averaging 36,448 over their 3 games. And the next closest team is San Antonio with 16,587. So of all the XFL games this year, there have been 4 with crowds of 20,000 or more. 3 of them belong to St. Louis at 35,000 plus for each one. The other one, as you mentioned, San Antonio in week 1. So San Antonio in 104,245. And the next time they came home in week 5, it was down to 13,274. So, you mentioned a lot of those other teams. There's a little bit of interest there at the beginning of the season, and then certainly levels off. But you haven't seen that in St. Louis. And you're exactly right, Randy. I got a little bit frustrated myself with some in the media, even the local media, that would say, no, we've really got to move beyond, Kroenke, it's over, it's been 8 years. And I think that really, while all of that is true, think of the fact that you had the XFL return in 2020. They played 3 games in St. Louis. So week 1 this season was game 4 for St. Louis football fans. It was the 4th chance that they had to show up and say, hey, we were treated, the way that relocation process went down, both from the standpoint of the fact that they kind of ignored all of the rules and regulations that they had in place. But more than anything else, I think there would have been a lot of contempt for Stan Kroenke, and he would have certainly lived in infamy in St. Louis had he moved the team and said, look, I'm a Missouri guy, I love that place. It gave me a chance to join this elite network of NFL ownerships when the team moved to St. Louis in the 90s that I was a part of. It's always home to me. This is a business decision. It makes sense for my organization in the league, but there'll be no greater friend to St. Louis than me in the league office when opportunities arise in the future. If that had been, the rhetoric around the move, there still would have been a lot of contempt for Stan Kroenke. But, I don't even imagine that St. Louis ends up filing a lawsuit at that point. It absolutely was. He salted the earth on his way out and created this national narrative that it's really the fans' fault. I was the wrong party here. And if it wasn't for these people who let me down, maybe I could have, made it work out. And I think the fact that St. Louis is angry about that 8 years later has every right to be. The city came to an agreement with the lawsuit, but that's wonderful. But that's not something that the fans really had a chance to take out, vent some of their emotions about it. So if that's partially what is driving, St. Louis's love for the Battlehawks, then I think it's part of it. But certainly, as you alluded to, that's far from the whole story. And I'll tell you, having been at some of those Rams games, say after the greatest show on turf, days had passed us by. These are so much more fun, Randy, and atmosphere. And, you go to one of those games, you're going to have a great time. It's a lot more fun than watching, a Rams team that also really wasn't playing for anything for most of those games. There wasn't much at stake, from 2005 to 2015. So, here we've got kind of a love affair with this team that wants to be here, a league that recognizes St. Louis's value to it. And I think what's really important, just my last point on this, Randy, is as I mentioned, there needs to be a spring league that survives. You have so much talent that comes out of Power 5 Division I schools that want the chance to continue to play. These guys, they've been riding that cusp of NFL rosters for several years. They don't want to walk away. And they play good football. This is the quality of football, given the fact that it's a pretty limited training camp and not a lot of time. Most of these guys had never played together before until January when they showed up down in Arlington together. And every single one of these guys has talked about the camaraderie on the team, how close they bonded, how much fun they're having. We talked to Gary Jennings this week, and he said it's the most fun he's ever had, including high school. It's the most fun team he's ever been a part of. So it's important that the league survive. And let's not kid ourselves. If St. Louis weren't doing what it's doing, the XFL has announced that they're likely to return next year. But if St. Louis weren't putting this league on its back, really, I think there's a lot of question as to whether or not it's likely it'd be the third time that the XFL would go one season and fail.
I do think that St. Louis, obviously, carrying attendance, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I thought I had read before last week, they lead the league in merchandise sales. They're generally the leader in eyes on their games are usually the most watched games in the league from week to week. But I do remember The Rock or Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia, the ownership group, they're saying they had built a 5-year plan for this league. I know there's a lot of people, I've seen it on the forums, who are concerned about the XFL surviving because of every other city not going to games, every other city not watching as much as we do. But the thing that I think is the reason this league does survive, and the seeds got planted in 2020, is this ownership group owns the league and the teams. And I think if you're going to have a spring league survive, you cannot distribute ownership to the individual cities. You can't do it because, as we know, human nature, these owners, they'll go out. One owner will spend more money than another owner. One owner will try to attract a player with a certain salary that another team isn't going to attract them for, or try to attract that player. And then all of a sudden, you've got one owner who spends, who goes rogue, spends a ton of money, and then that franchise ends up going under. This league is managing cost. This league is controlling cost and spend. They are advertising from one spot. They're training from one spot. They've got a pretty good TV contract in place. So to me, the people who are questioning whether this league is going to survive, I think the ownership group saw way beyond butts and seats. I think they really looked at, how do we make sure we're controlling the cost of every single one of our franchise, and we have a pretty good TV contract in place. And that's why I think it will survive for multiple seasons.
Yeah, I think that's true. They certainly did a good job of structuring things, and it ultimately creates some kind of interesting components to the league. And one of those, as you mentioned, they all live and work out of that hub in Arlington, Texas, where they train and they live together throughout the season. And then, of course, one of the funny things about that is when they go to play in the market. So this week when Seattle and St. Louis both fly into St. Louis to play on Sunday afternoon. They'll fly together into town, and then after the game, one that's probably going to be, again, a lot at stake, and those guys are going to be going after each other. Then they're going to get back on the same plane and fly home, or back to Arlington. So it does create some interesting situations. But I do think it kind of, as I mentioned, what Gary was telling us, the camaraderie that comes from doing that, all living on the same facility, really has been something that's been beneficial for the players. It's certainly in the St. Louis case, it's bonded those guys together. I think that one of the things that's going to be interesting about the XFL and its survival is when you compare it to some of the other spring leagues where they have a creative model as well, but they actually play the games all in one city. So you have a league that doesn't go to its home markets. It'll have a team for Houston, but Houston will never play in Houston. They're going to play in Birmingham, Alabama, or wherever the site is. I think that's, while an effective way to control costs, you've seen a lot of, of course, St. Louis's fans are second to none in the XFL, but, DC has the beer snake, and there's lots of kind of fun traditions and kind of oddball things that XFL fans, knowing that it's a league that is meant to be fun for fans, have created for themselves. It'd be a real shame, I think, if the league can't survive by also being in these home markets and spreading that, throughout the country. I'll be interested to see if there is a change a little bit in some of the markets that they've selected. Obviously you need to have some stability year after year and continuity to grow, the game and the fan base. But at the same time, I don't know if it makes sense to have a team in Las Vegas. You look at their attendance numbers; they've never drawn more than 6,000 fans.
They play in a minor league baseball stadium.
Yeah, the field is very substandard, and frankly, probably dangerous. There's I think they could do a better job, perhaps, of market selection. I think of towns like Omaha, Nebraska, that have had a long history with Arena League football, and certainly an area that supports football that like St. Louis, has a little bit of a Midwestern culture. There's going to be an appetite for that in the spring, from an attraction standpoint. Whereas Las Vegas, it's far down on the radar of what's going on out there. So I think they could do a better job selecting markets. But you're right. I think that they've obviously intelligently structured their business. And I think if you do see the XFL hang around for a while, it's going to be great. It's going to be fun. The St. Louis market, anywhere. The Battlehawk fans, as you mentioned, you turn on the TV on Sunday or you go to that game. If you're not wearing a Battlehawk shirt, you're going to be in the minority. Most folks have already stocked up on their merchandise, so they're not going anywhere. They'll be here next year as long as the XFL is too.
Yeah, and again, the XFL even in 2020, before this current ownership group, and this current ownership group has ended up falling in line with the model of that first group in 2020, which part of the message is. And they were the first spring league, I think, that actually came out and said this publicly, which is, we are not competing with the NFL. We are trying to develop players to get to the NFL. That's our goal. And so it almost gives it the same as AAA baseball to the major leagues and in Major League Baseball. It gives it that type of feel. These guys are there to work. They're there to work hard. They're there to succeed because they want to get to the league. And so there's an extra level of work, an extra level of commitment, I think. And you can see that from these players. And in your articles, you can read it from the players you interview and the players you talk to and how much fun they're having because they're working and they've got a goal, and that's get to the league.
Yeah, and I think maybe this would be a good way to transition to the Cardinals for a few minutes. But, covering the AA team here in Springfield lately, and you can now see it with Jordan Walker. The players that are playing in AA, they're close. They're so much closer than everything that goes on in Major League Baseball, from the travel to obviously the spotlight that you're under, 30,000, 40,000 fans a game in the stands and national television audiences. You go down to the AA level, there's 5,000 people in the stands. There's probably not a television audience. But the gap so the gap in those terms is significant. The gap in terms of the play on the field is much closer than most fans recognize or realize or spend much time thinking about. And so you look at what Jordan Walker did in AA last summer, he's carrying it right over to the major leagues, 12 games into his career. And so it's a similar thing with the Battlehawks. These are guys who absolutely, one break goes their way or one break doesn't go their way, like in the case of Hakeem Butler and his broken hand. I'm not suggesting that he'd be a Hall of Fame tight end or receiver in the NFL, but absolutely is someone who would likely be holding down a roster spot and have an NFL career and be playing under, on the biggest stage had he not had a tough break. And so there's so many of those stories, and football really lacks that developmental league, that space between, college, my college career is over and I'm on the cusp of making an NFL roster. Where do I go? There's been a lot of, attempts to create that space. There was NFL Europe, which is where Kurt Warner spent, time. There's the arena leagues, but that style of football doesn't really translate well into showcasing yourself for the NFL. So I think it's important that there be a spring league. I don't know if there's room for 2 spring leagues. I think ultimately, the stronger one's going to survive at some point, but there is a need for it. And I certainly hope that the Battlehawks and the XFL lead the way, and St. Louis ends up getting to continue. And so much fun, Randy. You've been part of that atmosphere. You just talked about, what you've created, what you've helped create inside that dome. It's every bit as loud as I can recall it being, perhaps not, from 1999, but
right.
But certainly louder than it was in 2009, and a lot more fun.
For sure.
And it also allows you to embrace some of the, going to an NFL game in 2009 at the Dome was kind of a dreary experience. The Dome is what it is. It's a warehouse convention center with a football field in the middle of it. So, but that now, kind of becomes part of the charm, here with the Battlehawks. It's, yeah, you're right. We're going to go in this dump and we're going to go crazy and wear, we're not going to have a shirt on and put a bird helmet on our head and go crazy. And I think that creates an environment that just makes it a lot more fun to be there than it was during, kind of the last several years of the Rams.
I will say, when you watch this crowd, and look, I think an NFL crowd's different mainly because, and I'm just being honest, the ticket prices are too expensive for a lot of fans to go to NFL football games now. I mean, I think, so the fact that the tickets, even though they're not cheap, they're not astronomical. So you can go to games. I've never seen a fan base get dressed out and dressed up as much as this fan base does. I don't think it's stated enough. You're talking about, and let's say what it is. I mean, it's AAA football, players trying to get to the NFL. It's not the NFL, and this city is averaging 36. It's monumental. And I am so happy to be a part of it, and I know you are too. I do want to talk to you at one point, not today because we're running out of time, but I do want to talk to you at one point. I think there are some brilliant XFL rules in place that I think the NFL should be implementing, and they could implement that would make the NFL product, as great as that is, even better. And we'll go over that another time. I want to get your thoughts on some of the XFL rules. Okay. Cardinals, you talked about Jordan Walker. If you remember a couple weeks ago when you and I talked, I said to you, I don't understand why they're rushing Jordan Walker. What is the reason they have to push him to this major league roster? They don't have to push him. He struggled at the end of spring training. Why not give him a couple weeks in AAA to find his footing and then get him up here? But man, was I wrong. You've seen this kid work every day when he was at Springfield. What makes him so successful other than his raw ability?
Well, yeah, and I remember thinking at the time too, when we had that discussion, that the real important thing was he going to get the playing time, the at bats? You have Lars Nootbaar, Dylan Carlson, Tyler O'Neill. You've got a crowded outfield scene in St. Louis. You have Alec Burleson, who's still up with the club. So it was a question of would he get those at bats to give him the consistency that he's going to need as a developing talent. And certainly they've given him those at bats, and he's earned those at bats, and he's been leading the charge, obviously, offensively for the Cardinals. 15 hits in 12 games, 2 home runs. His batting average balls in play is 382, which maybe that's a little bit high and might normalize a little, but there's no question, that the talent, he has generational talent. And I think that's what's gotten the Cardinal fans so excited as they've heard his name and learned about him over the last year or so. He is the talent level to be a generational player is clearly present. That doesn't mean, of course, there's a lot that can happen in a major league career, that can alter that path. And I'm certainly not suggesting that 12 games in that he's going to be a generational talent. But one of the things that separates him, and I think it was very evident from the first time that I talked to him, and I think any fan who's watched an interview with him can see, he's a 20-year-old body, but he certainly is a very mature young man. He comes from a family. His dad went to MIT. His mom has a graduate degree, I think, from Harvard, and then one from Emory in Atlanta. So it's a very, they raised him with very focused on academics, on excellence and success. He had a 4.0 GPA in high school. He was set to go to Duke University and play baseball there. So this is someone who, is not going. He was well prepared to handle, obviously the pressure and the environment that he's in now as a 20-year-old playing in front of one of the best fans in baseball. He's not going to be someone who shies away from that. He's also still someone who knows how to be humble, knows how to look at someone like a Nolan Arenado or a Paul Goldschmidt, observe what they do, take their advice, be coachable, understand that this is part of the process he has to go through, the extra work in the cage, the things that he has to do. So he's receptive to coaching. He's a humble person. He's clearly extremely talented. And I think it's, Cardinal fans, if they haven't fallen in love with him already, as you get to know him, the longer he stays here, you're just going to be so thankful, that the Cardinals were able to draft him and to develop him, because he's going to be special.
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing the signs of that. That is, that's amazing. One other young guy that I really thought was going to end up being a star, and by the way, 2 years ago in spring training, not this last spring training, but the 2022 spring training, Adam Wainwright was quoted as saying, "Keep an eye on this kid. He's going to be a star and a top of the rotation talent." And that's Matthew Liberatore, who is finally, it seems, doing very well at AAA. We only have like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Talk a little bit about what you saw at Springfield when he was there, and can he be that guy Adam Wainwright says he can be?
Yeah, he definitely can be. His question really is being able to keep the ball down, and he's got a great curveball. He's kind of the left-handed Adam Wainwright with his breaking ball. But can he locate his fastball? Can he throw strikes? Can he live down in the zone like Cardinal pitchers, historically have always had to do to be successful? But I think one of the things that concerns me just a little bit, he's off to a great start here at AAA, this spring. But, the Cardinals, as we have seen, they're pitching, and I think everybody anticipated this going into the season, the pitching was going to be an issue. They're giving up the league worst 292 batting average against. Their ERA as a team is close to 5. And so it would be, Liberatore is sort of that first call from Memphis. If we've got a first call, that's likely who's going to be, on the bus to St. Louis to give us a start. You're certainly going to see him at Busch Stadium sometime this year. But I hope we're not seeing him in the role of a savior, because we need him. We certainly need him to grow into that kind of top prospect. Maybe future Adam Wainwright that he can be. But it would be a disservice to him to have to do it as, hey, we have an awful rotation. You need to come in and be the top of the guy this year.
Right. That I totally agree with that. But it just seems like he is finally coming into his own. And hopefully he can provide some good depth for the Cardinals this year, with the future being very, very bright. And he's a big, tall lefty. It's hard to pick up the ball out of his hand. I really am looking forward to seeing him develop and seeing what he can do this year. Andy, we've run out of time. I could talk to you for much longer than 30 minutes, but we have to go, unfortunately.
Hey, same here, Randy. I'll be in the building Sunday. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we got to track each other down. Yeah. Are you going to be up? I'll text you. Andy Carroll, let everyone know your Twitter handle so they can follow you on Twitter.
It's Carroll_SGF, and that's my Twitter handle. And then you can read all of my Battlehawks and minor league Cardinal stuff at Scoops with Danny Mac.
That's Andy Carroll joining me once again here in the Mole Hole. Thanks, Andy. We'll talk soon, and great to have him on. For those listening here at the end, I will get a link out on all my social media accounts directing you to our podcast, the podcast of the show today. Thank you, and until next Thursday at 8 a.m. So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening. KXOK LP St. Louis. Listen on the air at 102.9, online at KXOK.com, or on the free TuneIn app. 102.9 KXOK. Take KXOK with you wherever you go and listen on the free MyTuner app.
Hola, les habla Santiago Beltrán. ¿Qué tal? Yo soy Héctor Vega y los queremos invitar a que escuchen Líder City por la señal de KXOK todos los miércoles en punto de las 6 de la tarde y otra vez los jueves a las 9 de la mañana. Es una hora completa de lo más reciente en deportes de San Luis, incluyendo nuestro equipo de fútbol St. Louis City SC.